I've got the fan going in here, but hopefully it doesn't cause too much background noise. This is going to be a follow-up video to my last video, which sparked a lot of discussion and debate. I took it down for a while because I felt like the discussion was getting too heated, but then I had some people ask me to put it back up, so I went ahead and put it back up. Alright, the first thing I'll talk about is some people had a problem with me using the word sweet. For those of you who don't know, sweet is actually not a derogatory term, it just means effeminate. It's something we use down here in the South. The only way it's an offensive or derogatory term is if you're using it on somebody who considers themselves not to be sweet or, effeminate in any way. Which, in that case, the word gay would be offensive, if you're using it on somebody who does not consider themselves to be gay. So anyway, some people were saying that's disrespectful, they were saying, offensive or whatever. No, the problem is that I'm not using a term that you want me to use, so anything I say that's not what you want me to say is going to be quote-unquote offensive or hateful or whatever other words you want to attach to it. Listen, just because you're gay or effeminate or whatever you call yourself doesn't mean that you own those terms. Now, if I'm talking to a specific gay person or effeminate person and they say I prefer to be called gender nonconforming is what the person said or whatever, then I will refer to that particular person by that term because just out of respect for them, because I'm talking to a specific person. But when I'm talking just in general, you don't get to tell me what to say. You do not own the term just because you're gay or effeminate or whatever. Now, here comes the part where somebody likes to make a race analogy. Well, what if you were black what if you're African American, people kept calling you black and you was telling them not to. Alright, if I tell somebody that, okay, for example, I don't like the term African American. The only time I use the word African American is to differentiate between different ethnicities of black people. Like there's, Jamaicans, there's, Nigerians. So we're African Americans, meaning black people who are descendants of slaves in this country. But other than that, I don't use the term African American. But let's just say that I wanted that term used for me. If somebody wants to continue to call me black or some other name, then I just don't respond to them. I say, if you're not going to call me what I want to be called, then I don't answer to you. And that's how you handle that. I don't need to go get some law passed to make that word illegal. I mean, leave people free to do whatever they want to do. I just don't have to be around them if I don't want to. I don't have to answer to them if I don't want to. Just like a transgender person who was born male and transitioned over to female, if somebody wants to continue to call them he, they just don't answer to that person. For those of you who have watched my other videos, you know that pretty much I'm a live and let live type of person. For the most part, if you're doing something that doesn't hurt anybody else, then I don't see anything wrong with it. So I'm not against gays, I'm not against swingers, I'm not against people who worship Satan, whatever. Whatever floats your boat. Where I have a problem is when people start trying to force their beliefs onto me or force me to live by their rules. There was this Christian couple, they had a printing shop. I forgot what state it was in, somebody may have heard of this. But they had a printing shop and they're Christians, and this gay couple came in and they wanted to print announcements for their wedding. And the printer refused to print it. So instead of this gay couple saying, okay, fine, we'll just go somewhere else, they went and sued them. And I think the couple actually had to end up moving their business to another state. Now, stuff like that I don't like. And the reason is just very simple. Imagine if it was reversed. Let's say it was a gay couple who owned a printing press, and then some Christian couple came in with some kind of anti-gay literature and wanted them to print it, and they said, no, I'm not going to print that. People should have a right to choose what they want in their lives and what they don't want in their lives, and what they choose to support and what they choose not to support. There was no reason for that gay couple to have to sue that printer. There are plenty of other printers who will print whatever you want. So why do they have to harass this couple? Listen, you have a right to be gay, you have a right to be polyamorous, you have a right to be swingers, you have the right to cross-dress, you have the right to do anything you want to do. But people have a right not to associate with you. Now again, I'm not saying I am against gays or swingers or anybody else. I said I'm live and let live. But if there is something that I choose not to associate myself with, I have a right to say, you know what, if you're going to be involved in that, I don't want to be around that. Now, I would not take away your right to do whatever it is you're doing, but at the same time, I don't want to be associated with it. And that's my right. I know there are some things in my own life that other people may not agree with, but I'm not going to force them to recognize what I'm doing or accept it. I mean, I may make videos pleading my case or, try to, quote unquote, educate them about it or maybe even convince them, but I would not force myself on them. Now, let's talk about what I said about my son wearing a dress. Now, I think some people were still getting confused about what I was talking about. First of all, if you are an adult transgender person, you are an adult making an adult decision. So, I got nothing to say to you. Like I said, I'm live and let live. But when you're talking about a child, they don't get to make whatever decision they want to make. I'm the parent, I'm the adult, so I'm going to make the decision that I think is best for them at the time. Now, if I come to see that a different decision needs to be made, I'll make it at that point. But in general, I don't think it's a good idea for a boy to have a dress on, and I would not allow my son to wear a dress. Now, if he's transgender, that's another thing. I'd take him to a psychologist and see which way is best to proceed. But if my son, who identifies as a boy, starts putting on dresses, and you say, well, why would he do that if he's not transgender? Because, as I mentioned to somebody else, if you ever watched that show called Noah's Ark, it was on the Logo channel. Like, the main character, his name was Noah, I guess it was. Like, sometimes he would wear like a scarf that was just obviously for a female, or he'd have on a blouse, or he had on some really tight pants that I'm pretty sure were female pants. Like folks like that, or even Chris Crocker, the guy whose picture I put up in my last video. He identifies as a male, but as you can see, he is very flamer. So that's the type of person that I'm talking about. A transgender child is a whole separate issue that needs to be taken care of with doctors and psychologists and stuff like that. So and that would have to be handled on a case-by-case basis. What's best for one quote-unquote transgender child may not be best for another. Sometimes it's just a phase they're going through, or sometimes just want to live as the opposite sex but don't want to get a sex change, or there's all sorts of different degrees of it. So I would not try to make a sweeping solution for all transgender people. Now, if my son is just playing, sometimes, a little boy will step into his mother high heel shoes and just go traipsing around the house. That's one thing. But actually having a regular part of his life, putting on dresses, no. And some people were saying, well, what if it makes him happy? Well, excuse me, but that's not the only barometer I use to make the decision on whether or not I'm going to let my kid do something or not. I'm sure eating a lot of ice cream and cake would make him happy. But that's not necessarily the best thing for him, and I don't feel like a boy wearing a dress is the best thing for a boy. And the people are saying, he's going to grow up hating you. Listen here, most people do not hate their parents. Even bad parents, their kids love them. It's very rare that people just actually hate their parents. And it's not like I'm going to say, listen here, you little faggot, you're not wearing a dress. I can sit him down and say, listen, you're not wearing a dress. I can say it in a nice way, I can redirect him, whatever. But if you're thinking some person who's going to get this belt and try to beat the gay out of him or something, or lock him in a closet, I'm not talking about that, okay? Remember the saying, it's not what you say, it's how you say it? Well, just apply that there. I don't have to be mean about it, I don't have to be nasty about it, I don't have to break his spirit, but I can just redirect him, and I'm not going to allow him to wear a dress. That's just that simple. Alright, some people had a problem with me saying that when I envisioned having a son, I didn't imagine having an effeminate boy or a boy who would want to put on dresses, or even a transgender child. What's wrong with saying that? It's the truth. Nope. Even I hear gay people say they wouldn't hope for their child to be gay. And even the parents who accept their children being transgender, they still say that there's a point where they kind of go through a period of mourning for the child that they lost. Like, let's say they had a son, and the son transitions over into a daughter. Okay, they lost a son, and they mourn for that son. Like, I've seen documentaries or whatever, where the parents, when they look at pictures of their kids when they were babies and they were still a boy, quote unquote, and they sit there and they cry because they really did lose a son, even though they gained a daughter, I guess you could say. When you have a boy, you expect to have a boy. So it's not wrong to have expectations for your children, and to be like, and to even, have to take a minute to process it. Okay, my son's not a son anymore. He's going to transition over into a female. Is that just something you're just supposed to accept in 5 minutes? Can we have like a little bit of time to just adjust? If my child was truly transgender, then, I'd have to find a way to, and after a while, you love your kids, so you'd get over it. But again, it just takes some time to get used to. It's not like, snap, oh, I have a daughter, cool. Another thing, people who want to equate disagreeing with, and again, this is not me, I'm just saying, people want to equate disagreeing with homosexuality as hate. Why would I hate my own child? That doesn't even make sense. Now, before you get started, I know there are parents in the history of the world who have hated their kids, but that's not the norm. Most people love their kids. So Why would I hate my child? What you should know is that most of the things that parents do, even if it's a mistake, they do out of love for their children. So I don't see how wearing a dress is going to benefit my son, okay? So I'm not doing it out of hate. Even if it turns out to be the wrong decision, which I'm not saying it is or isn't, I don't do it because I just want to make his life miserable. There are some things my kid is going to want to do that I'm not going to let him do because I don't feel like it's in his best interest, and vice versa. There's some stuff he's not going to want to do that I'm going to make him do because it is in his best interest. And this just falls under one of those categories. And I had a few transgender people telling me how their parents didn't accept them and how that caused a rift in their relationship. That's fine. You're an adult. I'm talking about a child. I mean, of course, if you're an adult and you want to live a certain way and your parents don't agree with it, of course that's going to cause a rift. But I doubt that my 4-year-old is going to move out of the house because I won't let him put on a dress. I don't have any children myself, but I have been a substitute teacher. I have been a daycare service provider. I have worked with kids in summer programs. And 4-year-olds are pretty easy to redirect. Now, in the case of that one woman who wrote that My Princess Boy book, it looks like her son was pretty persistent. He might turn out to be transgender, after all. But it appears he still identifies as a boy because he still wears his hair cut short and he calls himself a princess boy. It could go either way. But still, usually young children are pretty easy to redirect. All right, and to the people who said, well, if it were a girl, would you feel the same way? Yes and no. Well, first of all, I was a tomboy myself. I liked to wear jerseys and all that stuff. And Mom was like, nope, you're not wearing that. But when I got into high school, it wasn't really nothing she could do about it. So I'd wear whatever. The thing was, I really was into TLC when they were out. They had that little tomboy thing going on. So I was really into that. I even had the T-Boss sideburns for a minute. But anyway, women can get away with being tomboys more than boys can get away with being effeminate. Because, usually when a girl is a tomboy, she still looks like a female and still pretty much dresses like a female. Like, she'll always have pants on, but it's not like she's actually going to be wearing boy clothes. But I think if my daughter was kind of like Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt's daughter, chopping off her hair, wearing ties, and, just identifying as a boy, well, Shiloh might actually be transgender. But let's just say my daughter still called herself a girl, but just was all butched up and stuff like that, I'd probably redirect her too. Again, we're talking about a small child. You don't know where they got this idea from, if it's coming from inside or from some kind of external stimuli. So I'm not going to encourage it. But if it sticks with them into adulthood or teenagehood, then that's a different story. But a young child, they don't just need to be encouraged to any little thing they pick up. I probably wouldn't allow my young daughter to chop her hair off, but I would let my son grow his hair long if he wanted to. I mean, we're talking about small children. Of course, when they get to be teenagers, they do whatever the hell they want with their hair. For the most part, I wouldn't let my daughter can come in with a shaved head or anything. That just wouldn't be allowed. I mean, if I'm not going to direct my children in the way I feel they should go, then what do they need parents for? They might as well just raise themselves. Another thing about a kid who wants to cross-dress, some people are saying, you should just encourage him to be who he is or whatever. All right. I don't see any evidence that that's necessarily the right way or the only way to handle something. That might just be one way of handling it. For example, if your child feels like they're the opposite sex inside, they're probably going to feel like actually, I don't even know, because I was watching a documentary just the other day, and they may have said most, but I'm not sure. But they said a lot of kids, it's just a phase they're going through when they feel like they're the opposite sex. Again, I still love them. I'll still be supportive of them, but I'm just not going to allow him to wear a dress. That's all. There's no yelling. There's no beating. There's no locking in the closet. There's no calling anybody a fag. You're just not going to be allowed to wear a dress. And just because you may be transgendered and certain things work for you, that doesn't mean that I have to encourage my son by letting him wear a dress. Okay, when he gets old enough, if that's what he wants to do, fine. Once the child gets a certain point, then your job is done to, as far as molding them and telling them what they can and can't do. But as a 4-year-old child, as a 6-year-old child, I would not allow my son to wear a dress, and that's just what it is. And no, that's not hate.